Greetings and welcome back. In this section, we are going to work on a question 1 from the June 2022 exam paper. Question 1 is based on the topic of algebra, equations, and inequalities. So it's a mixture of many questions, mostly equations, quadratic equations, simultaneous equations, exponential equations, and many other equations, as well as inequalities. So let's get into the question. Question 1.11, it is asking us to solve for x. Okay, and the question reads as follows: x squared plus 2x minus 15 is equal to 0. Now there are 3 marks for this one. So basically in this question there are many ways of solving quadratic equations, but here we are going to use the factorization method. So most students, you are familiar with the factorization method. So open up your 2 sets of brackets because you're going to get 2 factors. And then from there we break up the x squared into x, and then we are basically looking at the factors of negative 15 whose sum is positive 2. So 2 numbers that multiply to give us negative 15, they add to give us positive 2. So these numbers are positive 5 and negative 3. Okay, you can put them in any order, or you can write it as x negative 3, x positive 5 is equal to 0. So these are the 2 numbers, positive 5 and negative 3. If you multiply them, they will give you a product of negative 15. If you add them, they will give you a positive 2. So those are the factors. From the factors, we are going to derive the values of x. There are 2 values. So from the first set of bracket, the factor x plus 5, our x will be a negative 5. And then from there, x is equal to positive 3. So you just change the values of the values in the brackets inside there. So these are the 2 values of x that we've solved there. Okay, coming to the next question. Question 1.12, it is 5x squared minus x minus 9 is equal to 0. So this question is the instruction to leave your answer to 2 decimal places. So you are required to leave the answer to 2 decimal places. So when the question is asking you to leave to 2 decimal places, you do not have to use factorization. Don't try to use factorization method, because in that case it shows that our values of x have got decimal values. So factorization method will not work. So the method that we use here is the quadratic equation. The quadratic equation, quadratic formula, which states that x is equal to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So most students are familiar, quite comfortable with this method. So the a, b, and c are coming from the fact that every quadratic equation can be written in standard form, which is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. We call this one the standard form. So a being the coefficient of x squared, the leading term, and b is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant. So if we compare it with this equation here, which is 5x squared minus x minus 9, okay, so we have, again, let's change the color here. Our x is 5x, our equation is 5x squared minus x minus 9 is equal to 0. So A is the coefficient of x squared. So you will see that our A here will be a 5, and our B is -1, then our C is -9, and -9. So the quadratic formula uses the fact that we are going to substitute these values 5, -1, C into this formula here for us to get x. So when we do that, we're just going to substitute here. We have a negative for that one, negative in the formula. B is -1, so -1. Take note there are two negatives here. The first negative is for the formula, the second negative is for the value of B. Plus or minus uses the fact that we are going to take the positive root of the value or the negative root. The square root of a number can be positive or negative. So that's why we got plus or minus. This will give us B squared. B is -1 squared. Remember to put, especially if your B is negative, remember to write it in inside brackets so that your negative will turn to positive. Okay, that's part of the algebra now. So the formula goes on to say -4, A is 5, C is -9. Okay, everything is divided by twice the value of A, which is 5. So just enter these values in your calculator. Okay. So we have here negative of -1, which is our negative B, plus the root of -1, okay, squared, minus 4 times A is 5, and -9, okay, over 2 times 5, which is 10. Okay, we enter it like that one, 2 by 5. Okay, press answer. So our value here is 1 plus or minus. We used a plus because you can't type plus or minus in your calculator. So first enter your values using a plus or using a negative, any one of the two. So I used a plus, so my value is expressed as a said number here, 1 plus root of 181 over 10. Sometimes I've seen they do award marks for that value, so write it down. So that is 1 plus or minus root of 181 over 10. Okay, so now to get the value of x, so remember the question is asking us to express to 2 decimal places, so change that one to decimal, so that will be 1.45. So our x value is 1.45, right? Or we've got the first value from using a plus, and now to get the other one, we're going to add the minus sign. We're going to use the minus sign, which is we go to our entry in our screen, just replay and delete the positive and insert the negative there. Our answer is -1, which we have written over here. Okay, we've written it already over here. So we just have to change that one into decimal. So this is -1.25. The 4 rounds up because of the third decimal digit, which is a 5. So that will be -1.25. So these are the two values that we get from there. As you can see, these are decimal fractions. So if you were tried to simplify them to use the method of factorization, that would cause you a big problem. So the bottom line, when you see that the question is starting you to express the value to a certain number of digits, 2 decimal digits or 3 decimal digits, jump straight to the quadratic formula. The next question, 1.13, is inequality. A 1.13 is to solve here x squared is less than or equal to 3x. Okay, so x squared is less than or equal to 3x. The way we solve an inequality is more or less similar to the quadratic equation, but then we have to give the values of x as a range, because here we have an inequality sign. Our inequality sign is less than or equal to 3x. So let's go through the process like we are solving a quadratic equation. So we express this one in standard form. It's going to give us x squared. Take the 3x over, that will be negative 3x is less than or equal to 0. There's nothing left here. Then we factorize, and this will give us x into x minus 3 is less than or equal to 3. The purpose for is less than or equal to 0. The purpose for factorizing here is to find what are critical values. Critical values are values which when we are the x values which when we substitute into this inequality, they will give us a value 0. So this is more like we are solving a quadratic equation, x squared minus 3x is equal to 0. So from here, the critical values, we get x is equal to 0 and x is equal to positive 3. Just treat it like you are solving for x. So our critical values are x is equal to 0 and x is equal to 3. Now critical values are important when we are solving our inequality equation, inequality problem. What we do is now we are going to assume we've got a number line, okay, which are the values of x. So on that number line, we insert the critical values as they appear on the number line. So we start with a 0 and then we've got a 3 there. So insert your critical values on the number line as they appear naturally on the number line. We can't start with a 3 and then a 0 because 3 always appears on the right of 0. So from here, we are going to use, there are many methods that we use, but the simpler one that we can use here is to use the fact that if we look at our inequality on the left side of our inequality problem, this is representing a quadratic function. It's a quadratic function. So when we draw this function, if we try to sketch this quadratic function, we will find that it is a concave up. Some students call it a happy face. So it's a concave up curve, okay? So what we are going to do is I'm going to draw this curve over here, okay, passing through 0 and then up to 3, up like that, okay? In most cases, it's easy first to draw your curve, and then where it intersects the x-axis, then you just slot your critical values, which is 0 and 3. So it's quite difficult for you to insert the critical values, then follow the curve or passing through those points. But anyway, so that's what we have here. So draw your curve like that, which is a quadratic curve, is concave up. If it is negative, the coefficient of x squared is negative, so we are going to draw a concave down. So in this case now, the meaning for this curve is to give us the values in which our function is positive and negative. So if we analyze this graph from 0 going to the left, okay, going to the left, we'll find that our curve, the curve is representing all the possible y values. So this curve here is above the x-axis. In other words, it is positive. So it means that the y values are positive. Between 0 and 3, our curve is below the x-axis. So it means that here the y values are negative. And then from 3 onward to infinite, the values are positive as well. So this is going to help us to now solve the inequality. This brings us to this point here where we are saying our inequality is less than or equal to 0. Now the simple meaning from this statement is that if we take assume we've got a number line, okay, and we've got a 0 here. The number line 0 is the midpoint of the number line that separates the positive values and the negative values. So the statement that less than or equal to 0, in simple terms here, it means that we want the region that is negative. If we look at the numbers that are less than 0, we are looking at all the numbers that are in the negative region. Okay, if our inequality sign is greater than or equal to 0, so the greater than or equal to 0, it means we are looking at positive values. Okay, so what this statement requires us to find are the values that are negative. So negative means our values are less than or equal to 0. Now coming to our graph here, that's why we need to draw this graph. Now when we come to this graph, we will find that from 0 to the left, our values are positive, so we don't want this one. So you will find that we need the values from 0 to 3. So these are the values that are negative. So as you can see that here, from 0 to negative 3, as I explained, our graph is negative in that area, in that region. So this helps us to define now the values of x that we need. So the values of x in that case is the region between 0 and 3. So we are going to write our values of x as x is element of, which means x belongs to the set of numbers from 0 up to 3. Okay, we use square brackets. We will explain this one in another video, why we are using the square brackets and not the rounded ones. Another way of expressing this inequality is to write as 0 less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 3, basically meaning that x is a number between 0 and 3. So you can write your answer and that, and also like that. So you will see that with inequalities, the values of x, we don't have two definite values, but we've got a range of values, an infinite number of values. Any number between 0 and 3 will satisfy the inequality. And in drawing this graph is compulsory in the exam. It's compulsory, you get marks for that one. In some instances, you can simply draw a number line, and if you don't want to show the curve, the quadratic curve, you can do some testing, which is quite time consuming. So there's a 0 and a 3 there. So when you do your testing, you find that your values will be between 0 and 3. So you write your solution set like a number line. Okay, show a number line there. Since the inequality is including a 3, you use full circles. Okay, we've got another lesson where we will explain fully the use of these inequality symbols and language. So you can write it like that or this way. Let's go to the next question. The next question is asking us to solve for a. Okay, we are given that a plus 64 over a is equal to 16. Solve for a. So we have a plus 64 over a is equal to 16. So multiply every term by a so that we can eliminate the fraction there. Eventually we are going to have a squared plus 64 is equal to 16a. Okay, express this in standard form. We are back to equations again, quadratic equations. So we get 16a. So a squared minus 16a plus 64 is equal to 0. Express this one in standard form. We call this one the standard form. Okay. Standard form means all the terms are on one side and then 0 on the other. So then solving this one, we have to solve it by factorization again. So that is a negative 8, a negative 8. Okay, two numbers that we multiply to give us positive 64, the 8 to give us negative 16. Okay, so those are the terms. So that gives us a is equal to 8 twice. Okay, which basically means that our a is 8. So that solves the first part of the question here. And then the other question is now to solve for this equation. Solve for x in 2 to the power x plus 2 to the power 6 minus x is equal to 16. Okay, 1.1.2, actually 1.2.2. So the equation is, that is an exponential equation, 2 to the power x plus 2 to the power 6 minus x, okay, is equal to 16. Now when you see this statement which talks about which asks you to say hence, which implies that you have to use the previous answers that you worked out to derive or to calculate or to determine the value of x. So hence it means therefore, or you have to use your previous solution in this case. So now what we need to map up here is the fact that this question is more or less looking the same as that. Okay, more or less identical to that. It takes that format. So how is that? Okay, we can just write this one as 2 to the power x, okay, plus 2 to the power 6 into 2 to the power minus x is equal to 16. Okay, I'm writing this one in different color because it may not be necessary. I'm just explaining so that you see the similarity between this one and that. So, and after that you have got a 2 to the power x plus 2 to the power 6 by 2 to the power negative x. That is a 1 over 2 to the power x, using the laws of exponents, which says a to the power minus m is equal to 1 over a to the power m. Okay, so 2 is raised to the power negative, so we're going to bring it down. This will give us a 16. Now 2 to the power 4, calculate that one. That is a case, it will give us a 64 in this case. 2 to the power 6 rather, to the power 6 is a 64. So this is simply saying that we have got a 2 to the power x plus 64 over 2 to the power x. We are now dividing by 2 to the power x is equal to 16. Okay, so you'll find that this equation here, we've transformed it to look like that. So what it means now is when you compare this form layout of the question and the first one that we have solved here, you will find that is basically the same. That's where the term hence comes in. So you find that the a is taking the place of a 2 to the power x. So if we replace here 2 to the power x, okay, if we take out 2 to the power x and we write an a, and we write an a here and an a here, we are basically coming to the same problem there. Okay, so now let us then say if 2 to the power x plus 64 over this one is equal to 16, so it means that 2 to the power a is taking the place of a. So we're going to say 2 to the power x is equal to a. Okay, but we've got our a already as 8, so we're going to say therefore 2 to the power x is equal to 8. And solving this one, that will give us 2 to the power x is equal to 2 to the power 3. And that will eventually give us the value. The bases are the same in this case, so therefore our x will be equal to 3. Okay, so that solves question 1.2. Let's come to the next question, which is 1.3. 1.3 is exponential. Okay, so it's a question based on exponents, and it says again, so I'll write it here as root of 2 to the power 1002 plus 2 to the power 1006 over 17 into 2 to the power 998. Okay, so here what I would suggest we do is we have got 2 terms here on top, which is 2 to the power 1002 and 2 to the power 1006. So we need to factor out one term here, factor out a term. So what we need to do is we have got 2 to the power 8. Check the base with the lowest value of the exponent. In this case, 2 to the power 998. 998 is the smallest number amongst these numbers, 1002, 1006, and 1008. Okay, so I'm going to factor out 2 to the power 998 here in the numerator. Okay, so I write 2998, take out, and then we are going to get to factorize now numbers with a base 2 to the power something here. Remember, when we are using exponents, when we use exponents, when we multiply the same bases, the exponents we add. So we need a number that we need to add here so that we get a 1002. We add it to 998, so that value is a 4. For example, when you multiply 2 by this one, 2 to the power 998 into this one, the exponents will add. Okay, so, and we also, from 2 to the power 1006, we do the same thing. That will be 2 to the power 8. So we factor out 2998. So in brackets here we put these terms. Then we divide that by 17 into 2 to the power 998. Okay, so this 998 can now divide and cancel out. So we are going to have, let me write the answer here. We are going to have now root of 2 to the power 4 plus 2 to the power 6 over 17. Okay, and this is going to simplify into 2 to the power 4, that is 16, plus 2 to the power 8, that that is a 256 over 17. Although they say that you should not use calculators. At this stage you can enter your values in your calculator, okay, because this is just adding here 16 plus 256 over that one. So this is going to give us a root of 256 plus 6 plus 16, okay, and that is a 272. So we're going to have a 272 over 17. Divide that one, okay, that is a 272, okay, 72 divided by 17 gives what to 16. So this will give us square root of 16, which is eventually gives us a 4. Okay. So that's how you can simplify that. Coming to question 1.4, the question says solve for x and y simultaneously. The equations given are 2x minus y is equal to 2 and 1 over x minus 3y is equal to 1. Okay, so write them here. Equation 1.4. Two x minus y is equal to 2. I'll always call this one equation 1. Then the second equation is 1 over x minus 3y is equal to 1. We'll call this one equation 2. Okay. So what we will need to do here is, coming to equation 1, we are given 2x minus y is equal to 2. So we need to take one variable. In this case, it's preferable to take y, because the coefficient of y is a 1, that will avoid fractions. So we make y the subject of the formula. So we rewrite this equation as y is equal to 2x minus 2. Okay, so I've taken the negative y to the right side and the 2 to the left side. Okay, so we're rewriting this one. So this, we can call it our equation 3, third equation. Equation 2, it is with a fraction. So at this stage, I think it's appropriate for us to eliminate the x at the bottom here. So we, as usual, we multiply by x each of these 3 terms by x. So if you multiply there, we are going to have 1 minus 3xy is equal to 1 times x, that will be x. Okay, I'll call this one equation 4. So we are going to work with these two equations. Y is equal to 2x minus 2 and 1 minus 3xy is equal to 2, which we have manipulated from the top equation there. So what we are going to do basically is to take equation 4, rewrite it, but in place of y, we are going to substitute y with 2x minus 2. So I've got 1 minus 3x y, 3x, but our y here is a 2x minus 2. So substitute that on the 2x minus 2. This is equal to x. So we've got x. So we've got one single equation, which is got one variable x. So we are going to solve this one, which will give us 1 minus 6x squared plus 6x is equal to x. So you can see that this one has led us to quadratic equation again. So we need to express this one in standard form. So that will give us a negative 6x squared. I'm writing the leading term, a negative 6x squared first, then followed by the coefficient of x. The x, when it comes over here, it will subtract, so we are going to have plus 5x, and then I've got a positive 1 is equal to 0, so the x comes to the left side. And then let us eliminate the negative, multiply by negative 1, so that will give us 6x squared. That's basically changing the signs here. 6x squared minus 5x minus 1 is equal to 0. Okay, that leads us to factorization again. So we can break this down into 6x and x. Okay, and then we are basically looking for what I usually do is to take the first term and the last term, these coefficients, multiply them 6 by negative 1. I'll write it here, that is negative 6. Okay, 6 multiplied by negative 6. So I will find factors of negative 6 whose sum is negative 5. So that is a negative 6 and a positive 1. So if I multiply these two, they give me negative 6. If I add them, they give us negative 5. Now what I will do, because of the 6 in this bracket, first bracket, I'm going to divide this by 6. The answer I get there is negative 1. I'll write it there. Okay, and then there is positive 1. I'll write it in that section. There's a separate video where I'll explain this one. So in this case, our 6x plus 1 into x minus 1 is equal to 0. So solving this one, that will give us x is equal to negative 1 over 6. Okay, from the first set of brackets, change the sign here into negative, then divided by 6, or x will be equal to 1. Okay, so that's what we have. Now from there, we are going to now use these two values. Let's come to equation 2. Equation 2 says that our y is 2x minus 2. So y is 2x minus 2. So we found the values, two values of x. So when x is negative 1 over 6, so when x is negative 1 over 6, so our y, we are now going to substitute into that. Okay, so our y will be 2 into negative 1 over 6, okay, minus 2. Okay, that will give us y equals minus 1/3, 2 times that one, and then minus 2. Okay, from here we will get negative 7 over 3. Okay, and then we are also going to do the same with negative 1. So when x is 1, when x is 1, our y again is 2x minus 2. So substitute 1 in here. So our y will be equal to 2 into 1 minus 2. So our y is 0. Okay, so we can just write, group the values here. Therefore, when x is negative 1 over 6, our y is negative 7 over 3. And when x is 1, our y is 0. So that gives us the two values of x.